right, everybody ready with the cameras?
I'm rolling, Jeff. You rolling? It's the medieval life.
Wait, don't do that at Red Tower.
When I got in, they did.
When men were men. And women were women. And sheep were right. Birds were just going.
We're rolling, baby.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming out. To give you a little background, this idea came forward from a conversation that His Excellency Kenneth and I were having with a young squire at a Kingdom A&S a couple of years ago, where we said something about Francois. And to our indeed horror, the squire looked at us and said, "Who's Francois?" And we went, "We're losing our history." And for a group whose purpose is to study history and preserve history and recreate history, for us to lose our own history is a travesty of justice. So, thankfully we've had people who are willing to come up and talk about this, and people who are willing to record it for posterity's sake. I'll probably let y'all tell stories. I'll probably ask some questions. We may have time for questions from the rest of the audience. Hopefully more people will show up. But thank you all for coming. Would y'all like to introduce yourselves? Give me your name and where you started.
I'm Big John, and I started 2 years ago. It seems like 42.
I'm Duke Orlando, and I started about the same time as John. And I was his first squire.
I'm the youngster of I'm Edward. I started AS11 now, and I was his first. A dynastic theme emerged.
Wait, if it's going that way, I'm one of your squire's squire.
Yes.
Horribly ingrown. It's very southern that way. Real banjo.
Tell you what, I want to start with.
If there's something you've been dying to ask, I'd rather have you ask it while we're sitting here rather than
Actually, there's a first one I want to ask, I think the most important one to ask. For those of you who don't know, other kingdoms, except for our 2 daughter kingdoms, do not kill their crowns at the end of the reigns. They have very formal ceremonies to end a reign and to begin another reign. I was telling the Queen of Calontir about we kill our kings, and she burst into tears at the very thought of it. I'm not kidding. So I have a feeling somebody at this table had something to do with us killing our crowns. So would you please explain where that tradition came from?
Well, let's see. All right. Very first crown was Paris. Correct?
Yeah.
Correct. Okay. And I didn't get rid of him.
No, he just kind of walked off.
I think that was because he had 4 dwarfs.
Yeah.
And everybody went.
there was a whole lot of
That was. So, and I had gone to 2 or 3 nations and I saw what they were talking about. The guy walks in.
I claim this crown by right of honor.
And goes, and I hereby crown you king.
Most folks who know me know that I like ceremonies. And so I've written a couple of them. And I wrote a ceremony for not my coronation, but the coronation of the guy coming after me. And I didn't really write his coronation ceremony, I wrote my coronation ceremony. And as I had been researching these for my first ceremony, I literally came across a ceremony, I believe it was from the Mid-Realm, and the prince, heir apparent, literally says, "In the name of the board of the SCA Incorporated," and I just kind of went, "No way, this is garbage."
And when you saw it, you saw it and went,
You know, it's like, yes, I'm king, and I'm just going to hand this over. No way.
we in Meridies, being hot-blooded souls,
Sight, pulse pounding.
And a lot of fake blood.
So, the time you knew was that the first time?
That was the first time.
Okay.
No. When he killed me.
Oh, that's right, because you were the old
I literally did makeup to be an old man. I had a long gray beard and drawn in wrinkles. At that time, I was pretty heavily involved in theater, go figure. I wore a costume that made me look very thin and frail, and Bear Killer and I had words, and I said something funny about... Oh, that's right, I kept falling asleep during court. And Bear Killer called me out, and we had a sword fight.
Live steel.
Live steel. And I had a bunch of blood packs, and triggered them all one by one, and eventually he thrust me through, and I climbed up the blade, and as I was dying, I made him swear the oath of state, the coronation oath, and expired just as he finished swearing.
Let me tell you what really happened. He and Bear Killer were being very numb, very tight. All the guys in this and so was
Princess of the Midland.
Princess of the Midland and our good friend Admiral. Anyway, Burrow. Yep. Let's just say that's the only one.
Anyway, someone else.
Next to her, they were in the front row. They were all sitting in the chairs. And here's the first of the day. Good old people falling asleep. And in comes Bear Killer. Now, they proceed to have a sword fight with, actually, they weren't real swords. They were rebated. They didn't want to rebate real thing. But they struck sparks off the sword. And it's great. And we're sitting there going, this is cool. And then all of a sudden, one of them,
you never know.
made a swing on me. And I saw and jump up, grab the chair of the princess, and pull it like this. Just as the blade went. Acting genius. They didn't notice. They're all going. They finished it. I know. She was very gracious about almost being decapitated. And everything was fine. Well, a few hours later, I'm sitting here going, I made the right move. So I had to sort of speed up with him, and it was just by we got to the point. What are you supposed to have? Really scared. 20 minutes later, Bear Killer comes in right behind me. We're going to Casey. Let's speed it up on him. I'm trying to kill him, and all of a sudden he's got this book in his eye, and the next thing I know he's trying to kill me for real. Bear Killer, I can't moment, and it's all over with the game. He has that hell. I don't think they ever told him. It's like, tell me, young boys, when they get yes. But that's how it started. It just went crazy.
And left an impression. Personally, my favorite detail from this was as they picked me up and carried me out. And as I was dripping blood on the floor, there were people in their dress costumes, because this was long enough ago. For coordinations, you always make something big. And they're reaching up to get the blood flowing. Because it's lucky.
They were tipping garbage in the blood. I, of course, got free gift. Margala had slaved long hours over the first really kind of authentic full-dress Saxon cloak we could manufacture, and we spent a lot of money on this. And so when I go to pick him up, here comes the whoosh, and it was white satin. So I didn't have to work to get my king.
And that's how we started killing our kings.
Are we dead?
No, we haven't done everything.
No, there's still.
There are many scenarios left untouched.
I wanted to assume probably couldn't work out the clothes.
You didn't talk to me.
I don't have a feeling that somebody would have ended up in the rafters.
Help me! Can I get down now? Half scenario.
2 hours after court.
One of the cooler king's deaths when Sir Francois died, he lay in state. Now that particular coronation happened at an actual abbey, so you have the actual crossing, the transept, the nave. We were real careful about what we did with things like altars, but he was up on a big marble slab and he lay there for an hour and a half, and everyone processed in state and gave their condolences to the fallen king. That was truly awesome.
That was a creative death, too, because what had set that up was Francois had come into court, and as part of their personas, Francois was brothers to a young fellow, an earnest young scribe named Thomas the Wordsmith. And Thomas is this very imposing man, gorgeous, mellifluous baritone voice, really a stellar, one of the stellar presences of the early days. And they agreed amongst themselves that might be fun if opportunities for theater presented themselves. They could just sort of take that relationship and run with it. And so what Thomas did was he sought a moment of the king's time in court. He's called for it, and he's doing this lovely speech, the essence of which was really boiled down to Mama Dad always loved it. You sit at high table and you have all the finest things, and you wave your hand, and ladies appear with perfume, things to towel you down in places made of towels. And you get all of this, and I, well, like suffering, have learned to accept it. But, you know, I've decided to let bygones be bygones. And today, my brother, I have a gift for you. And we call this a bread is for you. She has this wonderful case, and she opens the case. And inside is this gorgeous pen with an ostrich plume coming out of it. Brother, I desire to be reconciled. Come, let us hug and make our peace. And as Francois gets up to come forward, Thomas says, and I also mean to prove the pen is mightier than the sword, and he stabs him with the poisoned pen, writhing in calamitous death. His dutiful son rushes forth to be during the death throes, and Thomas is carried cackling wild. It's extraordinary. In the setting, you have to imagine the setting, it's better than humanity. Easily the neatest place we've ever had to conduct this kind of ritual. And it was later on, during the coronation portion of the thing, the neatest coronation I've ever been to was the white coronation of this man. If you were there, you were privileged to see a very special moment in Meridian history. It was something. Yeah, it was your idea, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I think I understand what you were going for. Up to that point, it had not necessarily been the practice of crown princes and princesses to make suggestions to the populace as to what they might do in unison to create a theme around which the coronation would take place. And I think with some reading that you came across a period account of where everybody was garbed in the same color. And you thought it would be an interesting one, especially since we have this extraordinary church to operate in as our performance space. That if everybody rose to the challenge of trying to be right for this, it could be a memorable thing. And it was, I don't know how it was for you.